Top 10 real estate investing stories. Have I got your attention? Let's go! My name's Bo Beery and I'm a multifamily broker in the Florida region, and we're gonna go through 10 horror stories that I've actually seen in deal making. And here's how you avoid them. Horror story number 1. Bob the investor never hired a property tax consultant before or after the sale. I've seen this happen all the time, and ooh, does it cost a lot of money. There are tax consultants that you can actually hire, preferably before you close on the deal, but certainly after the deal, that'll save you a ton of money. As an example, if your taxes right now are $50,000, you hire a consultant, they get you down to $40,000, which is totally possible. They're saving you $10,000 per year in taxes, and if you divide that by a cap rate, that's $167,000 in value. That's a lot of money, and it costs a fraction of that to hire a tax consultant. Horror story number 2. Investor Bob never bid out the insurance during the transaction. He just assumed you could get the same price. Just because the current owner has that insurance price doesn't mean you could get it. That investor could have thousands of units under an umbrella policy, in which case he's getting a super cheap rate because they're all lumped into one. But if you're a beginning investor or a medium-sized investor, you're not going to get that same price. For instance, this is a real case. The insurance was $9,000 in the investment package, but it was under a huge umbrella policy. The new insurance, once he went to go close, and he was already hard on deposits, was $16,000. That's a $7,000 difference divided by a 6% cap rate, and yeah, $117,000 loss. Don't be Investor Bob. Get 3 bids during the due diligence process. Horror story number 3, Investor Bob puts so much emphasis on cap rates that he loses out on millions of dollars in opportunities. Relying strictly on cap rates instead of concentrating on cash-on-cash return and IRR is going to lose people a lot of money. Cap rates just measure right now the income of the existing investor. It completely ignores debt, what you can do with the income, the vacancy, maybe how you can save on the expenses. For instance, if you can increase rents, let's say you have 50 apartments and you're increasing them at $20 a month per apartment per year, and you do that for 5 years, you divide that by a 6% cap rate to a buyer who concentrates on cap rates, that's an increase of $1 million in value. And if that investor also takes into consideration debt and concentrates on cash, it could be worth more than $1 million. Horror story number 4, Investor Bob never does an environmental test during the inspection period. No asbestos, mold, lead-based paint, or a phase 1 was done. Not having environmental testing done during due diligence can get so nasty, I can't even tell you. What if you're buying a 50-unit apartment complex and 3 parcels over, 50 years ago used to be a gas station that leaked onto your property? You're responsible for that. They don't care that you didn't do it, you're responsible for it. And you know what the average cleanup for fuel cleanup is? $300,000. Horror story number 5, Investor Bob hired the wrong property manager. Ooh, Lord, this can cost you a lot of money. Don't hire your cousin George, who manages a few rental houses, to manage your 20 or 100 or 200 unit apartment complex. Ask for a list of the assets that they actually manage. Ask for references of customers that they manage for so that you can call them and talk to them. And also ask to look at the reports they put out so that you can look at them to see if they give you the proper information you're looking for. Horror story number 6 that gets missed all the time is doing a multi-year capital expenditure accounting. Hiring a professional to do a multi-year analysis of when different capital expenditures are needed and in what year and what cost affects your returns. For instance, they'll be able to tell you if there are 6 air conditioning units that are going to fail in the next 5 years so that you can account for it. Maybe you need a roof in year 13. You need to account for it. Depending on when you go to sell the property, the timing of capital expenditures can make or break a deal. Horror story number 7, Investor Bob never did cost segregation right after closing. There are many components of an apartment complex that can be accelerated much earlier in the ownership period, which will decrease the amount of net income you have to pay taxes on. For instance, let's say you have $2 million in building improvements. The standard depreciation life that the government allows is 27.5 years. So that allows you to write off roughly $73,000 per year against your income in depreciation. But hiring a cost segregation specialist can sometimes get you many more times that amount in the first several years. This is particularly important if you're only going to be holding for 3 to 5 years. You can go ahead and get a lot more depreciation up front, which allows you to have more return and pay your investors more return. Horror story number 8. Good old investor Bob relied way too much on the broker pro forma. As a broker myself, I can tell you, don't rely on broker pro formas. In all seriousness, brokers are not trying to be deceiving. It's just that their estimates on income and expenses and debt may not be the same for you. It's fine to look at broker pro formas as a guide, but you want to make sure you do your own research. Always look at the actual seller's financial, because oftentimes what happens is the seller will give the broker a price goal and the broker just creates a pro forma to meet that price. Horror story number 9, investor Bob forgot all about the power of principal reduction and has missed out on a number of exciting opportunities. We're in the year 2020 with extremely low debt rates, sub 3 in some conditions, and the lower the interest rate goes, the more principal is being paid by our tenants, and that becomes super powerful over time, especially in the rate of return. As a matter of fact, there is an extra 3 to 5% on cash returns when you're borrowing for anywhere between 2.75 and 4% on a 30-year ammo, which is what you can get today. Particularly if you're a long-term holder that isn't using syndication money, this can be a really powerful tool and wealth builder. And horror story number 10, investor Bob is using less than 30-year amortization when buying his multifamily complexes. Amortization periods are really important because they keep your payment low, which allows for more cash flow to either service yourself or your investors. It's typically the local banks that only offer 15, 20, or 25-year amortizations. It's usually the larger banks, credit unions, and government institutions like Fannie and Freddie that do 30-year or better amortization periods. Investor Bob thinks that by having a shorter amortization period, he can pay it off faster, but you can have a longer amortization period and just pay it down more and have more flexibility. To drive home the power of amortization periods, let's assume we have a $10 million property with $568,000 in net income at a 3% interest rate and you borrowed 70% loan to value. Look at the cash-on-cash returns. On a 30-year ammo, that's 6.78%. Just going down 5 years already lowers you 1.5. A 20-year ammo cuts your returns in half, and forget about it on a 15-year ammo, because then you have no cash flow to put in your pocket, pay investors, or handle any issues that come up with the property. And that's my top 10 horror stories. Do me a favor, give me a like, share the video with your friends, share it in a couple of the real estate forums that you belong to on social media, and of course, give me a subscribe.